to recap, we had someone in the Discord who expressed that they were getting a little bit overwhelmed with how to set up the buttons in Final Fantasy because they're not an MMO player. Yes, it was Bliss Birdie. There you are. Hello. I didn't know if you were going to be here or not, but I wanted to cover this anyway so I can at least highlight it and send it to you. This is from like basic, because my my archer here is only level 9, so I thought maybe that might be a good place to start. Now, I use an MMO mouse, so if I just take one of these for these to highlight to show you. See, I have a 3x4 buttons here, 3x4 buttons here, and then I have another 3x4 with random buttons here. So this is a little bit complicated because, and it's like this because my MMO mouse, sorry, has 12 buttons on it in this configuration. So that's why I have it set up like that. This is all of my MMO mouse buttons in order. This is the same, but with the control modifier. So if I press control and then one of those buttons, that's what these ones are. And then over here, I just have 1, 2, 3, 4, AD, RF, control, modifiers, etc. And then just like a bunch of random other stuff. So to make it super duper easy, I'm just going to stick with this like 1, 2, 3, 4, AD, F, etc. You can set these buttons obviously to whatever the hell you want that works for you, like however your hand posture works the best, if you have an MMO mouse or not. So ignore all of this stuff. I'm going to even remove these things. Going to remove it. I always have my sprint button on R because R means run. And so I always know what that button is on every single character that I play. The best thing about Final Fantasy 14 is that, I was going to use shift instead of control. However, the shift modifier for this particular MMO mouse, the way that it's set up, it will use the number pad buttons where the shift modifier makes it do this. It's not an actual separate button, but it acts as the arrow keys. That's why I don't do it. I have to use control. I can't use shift, unfortunately. So if you're like super duper just starting out, just to get used to it, I would just stick with this like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's how I played WoW for like 15 years using that configuration before Mimi forced me to go to Mousetown. So I'll just stick with that just for the easy stuff. And honestly, if you keep finding that you're pressing the wrong button or something like that, like if for some reason in your head your muscle memory is to press a particular button for a particular action, the easiest thing to do is not so much to force yourself to learn that that's where that action is. Move that action to where your brain habitually thinks that action is. So if I have this random skill, just as an example, before we actually look at which ones we're putting on the bar, if I have these two skills here, straight shot and heavy shot, and heavy shot's on 1 and straight shot is on 3. But if for some reason, every time I want to hit straight shot, I keep habitually pressing 2 instead of 3, I'm just going to pick this up and I'm just going to chuck it on 2 because that's where I know that it is. So that's why I have this run button is consistently on the R key. And stuff like my, let's see. So here in my role actions, there's one called Second Wind, which is, you can see down here in the corner, which is a spell that instantly restores my own HP by an amount. So I'm like, okay, cool. If I'm playing a DPS class and that is the button that heals me, I'm going to put that button on the thing that I always press on every class that I press to heal myself as a DPS, which is going to be the F key. I always know that no matter which class I play, if I have a spell that heals me, it's going to be on the F key. So that's where I'm going to put it. And then there's this other thing here, leg graze, afflicts the target with heavy plus 40%. I'm guessing that just basically is it's like a snare or something for the enemy. So I'll just chuck that on D. Every time I want to cripple my enemy, I'm going to hit that thick D button. But I don't have an enemy targeted, so I can't use it. So now for these other ones, the actual actions for my class. We have Heavy Shot, which delivers 1 attack with a potency of 180 damage. Additional effect, 20% chance of Straight Shot, which is this, becoming ready. So it triggers... so you can only actually use this ability if this has procced and causes this ability to activate. Then you can press this one. Otherwise, you can't use this. So that means that I'm going to always have to press this one first. So I might as well just chuck it on 1. And then I can hit that whenever I want. If I put this on 2, say I can't use it. It's not active yet. But if I go and attack this lad, it's not active yet. So I'm just going to keep pressing 1. And I'm going to keep hitting 1. And keep hitting 1. And look, it became active now. That proc popped off. So that, because it's only a 1 in 5 chance of pressing this button that this button will activate. So now I can press 2. Go me. I can press the 2 button now. And all it does is it's a off cooldown button that delivers additional damage. So I already have the basis of a rotation set up. My rotation is that I can use D to cripple this fool. I can hit 1 to do some damage. I aggroed an extra bro, but it's fine. We're going to tab to target this dude. We're going to keep hitting 1 until this activates, and then we'll hit that. It actually is, I lied, it's on the global cooldown as well, but you can only use it when it procs. And I seem to be dying, so I'm going to hit that F key so that I heal. Because I know that that's where it is, because that's always the button that I press when I'm dying. I always hit the F key when I'm dying because I know where it is, and that's where it's going to be at. So next, we have another spell that increases damage dealt by 10%. So that's basically, it's just a spell that buffs my damage, which is always on the A key. If I am any class that has some kind of ability that buffs my damage, I always put it on A. And then this last one that I currently have active because I'm such a low level, delivers an attack with potency of 100. So an additional effect Venom. So it provides, I think that's a dot that it chucks on the enemy as well. So I'm going to chuck that one on 3. But then if I look at how I want to do my spells in order, I might end up switching this up because I might want to actually put the dot on the enemy first and then start shooting. So I'm going to swap this around. Now if I hit 1 first, I'll drop a dot. But now I'm so confused because this is the button I should press next, so I'm just going to chuck it on 2. Now I know. So now I can just keep hitting 2. Oh my god, 3 activated. I'm going to hit that now. So you just you always just optimize however it works for you. If that changes over time, that's totally fine. And another thing you can do, so as I said, I have some modifiers with the control key. So I'm going to buff my damage because I can, because it's off cooldown. Gonna damage the heck out of him. Because I'm trying to talk here, mate. So the other thing that you can do, if you have things like this that only proc off a certain ability, you might consider putting, instead of taking up another slot, which is the 3 here, if you can't always press this, like if you want to replace this key with one that you can always activate, so you can just do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3. And this only procs sometimes, you might consider putting it on the control key, because then every time it procs, you can say, okay, I'm hitting 2. Oh, it procced, this can activate. I'm going to press Control 2 to activate the thing that was procced by the 2 key. So it's kind of like, oh, this thing triggered that. Okay, cool. I'm going to press the modified version of that same button that does a similar thing, but I can only use it once. So anything that I have to use less often, anything that I use more often, I put on just like a basic button somewhere. There are special abilities that are always using the same keybind on every class. And then there are like modified ones that are, you know, things that proc off other things. So if you look at something that's super fucking complicated, like this summoner, this is all just like different minions I can summon, which is just Control 2, Control 3, Control D. D is always lucid dreaming on every single one of my DPS characters, which gradually restores my mana points. R is still run. F is my swift cast, which is the next spell gets cast immediately. This one increases the damage dealt by all party members. I can just move that to A because that's my buff button. So I can totally do that. My limit break is always on 3 unless I'm playing a tank, in which case the 3 button is whatever I use to stun. To stun the thing that I'm tanking to interrupt casts. So there is a method to this madness, essentially, is what I'm getting at. But you start building this up over a really long time as you slowly learn more spells, more abilities, work out what they do, play with them, move them around on your bars. You'll even notice, like now, even when I'm playing this character, I'm still moving things around sometimes if I find myself pressing a completely different button. So, like if I find that I'm always triggering this button instead of this one, I'll just swap them around, or I'll move this one over here, or I'll make, because these two essentially do the same thing, because they share a recast timer. These share the same cooldown. The only difference between these two spells is that this is a single target spell and this is an AoE spell. Other than that, these two are exactly the same thing. So if I wanted to, I could even move them like this so that this is the button I press to trigger the spell to trigger this spell. But if I modify it, if I hit this key, if I modify it, then I know that it's going to be an AoE attack. So it just depends how your brain likes to identify where things are and how you press those buttons. Same thing with, let's say, Ruin and Ruin 2. I have them set up this way because they're essentially the same spell, but one of them does a little bit more damage and takes more time to cast. This other one, it's the same spell, but it does a little bit less damage, takes less time to cast because it's instant, and costs twice as much mana because it's an instant cast. So usually I'm going to be hitting this one, but if I have to move around while I'm casting, then I'm going to need to press the instant cast one. And if I'm moving around really often, I'm not going to want to have to hold the control key every time I want to cast this. So I just keep both of those off because these are some of the spells I'm using most often. And then this is just the AoE version of Ruin, essentially. It does the same. It does like an amount of damage to an AoE in AoE, but it has a cast time that's similar to Ruin and costs like a similar amount of... Yeah. Anyway. So, I hope that makes sense. But yeah, essentially it's just totally up to how you find that that your muscle memory develops with the game. So I had to completely relearn this control scheme using my MMO mouse. I had to get used to the feeling of that, and it took me like a good few months to kind of get used to that. But originally I would have like 1 to 6, control 1 to 6, shift 1 to 6, you know, ADRF, control ADRF, shift ADRF, and it was a complete mess. So yeah, that's kind of the easy way that you can get started. But because I have my MMO mouse, I can just do stuff like this. So I'll be like, I'm going to do arrow things. I'm going to do arrow things. My heal is this button. Control thing is this button. And, you know. Yeah, so, like, it looks like these are in completely random spots. But in my mind, my muscle memory is just going to hit where I know that button will be. Like, this is a damage over time. This is a single target hit. This is going to heal me. Like, I just know where those are habitually. So I'm just going to put my buttons where I know that I'm going to hit the thing that does the thing that I want it to do for every single different class. So I have, like, that's how everything is set up. So, like, this is set up because these two spells are the same, these two spells are the same, these two spells are the same, but these are all single target and these are all AoE. So I know that this is going to always be my red spell, single target and AoE. This is always going to be my white mana damage spell, single target AoE. This one's going to be my black mana damage spell, single target AoE. This is the thing that triggers for these two spells to pop off. There isn't a red version of that. There's only this one. So if I want to do the white mana buff that activates when I press this, it's going to be with my white mana spells. Same with the black mana one. So that's how, you know, everything works. And then same with this class too. This spell rushes at an enemy. So if I target like this lad and I press control this button, control, because, you know, if these things were high enough that they lived through it, see, when I hit that, this procs. When I hit that, this procs. And then I end up pressing this button to pop back out. Like, it's all set up in a way that my brain can make complete sense of it, and I just hit buttons and it does what they're supposed to do. So I hope that makes sense. And if you're watching this on YouTube and it does, make sure you let me know in the comments. If you have any more questions, let me know in the comments so that I can ask my friend Mimi and she can teach me how to do it. And then I can show you on stream. Yay! And, you know, if there's a better way for me to explain this, I will try my best. But I just wanted to go over that because I know that Bliss was asking about it. And it's from the perspective, like, there is no dumb questions, okay? Like, if you're struggling with this many buttons and you are not that familiar with MMOs, I'm not surprised. And I know that it's really hard to get used to, but that's why it's so valuable to just take it like one step at a time and just kind of just look at it and be like, what kind of spell is this? Okay, that goes in this slot. What kind of spell is this one? What is the cast time like? What does it actually do? How many times am I going to have to press it? Do I use it a lot? Do I not use it so much? Does it have to be, is it my oh shit button that I have to know? I have to know where that button is to be able to hit it as soon as my sphincter tightens and I know that me or someone else is going to die. Like that kind of reflex button. So like my res button is just one. And that's like my macro that will pop off my swift cast and res whoever I click on. As soon as I see someone die, I'm like, boom, one. Okay, up you get. So, yeah, I hope that helps. Yay! Let me read back through these questions, if there are any. Hi, Fiddy. Hi. Then there's the controller scheme. Yes, I'm not familiar with the controller scheme. So that's why I'm talking specifically about the keyboard setup. You can play with controller, and I'm sure there are heaps of videos on YouTube about the controller one, hotbars, but I'm super not familiar with them. You can also use it on PC, but it was intended for like the PS4 release of the game. My coffee went cold in the meantime.